What does good dick mean to me? Well, I was saying to a friend of mine that I love stories, I love unconventional love stories about couples who seem to need each other in very specific ways. Maybe it's just the time in their life, and maybe they won't work out forever, but that's not really the point. Stories like, for instance, Secretary, I liked a lot because I found that those two people really needed each other in a very specific way, and I so loved their relationship. And as unconventional as it seemed like a healthy one because that was what each person needed at the time. So with Good Dick, I felt a similar way about the characters. They were two people who were so um, living out a specific time of their life in which they needed something very specific, and Jason's character was pretty sure he knew what he needed from Mariana's character and had to convince Mariana that she needed him too, and that was something that was really fun to watch because usually seeing somebody convince someone else who was so adamant about rejecting the other one is you're always rooting for the underdog in that situation, and so I think that same with like a story like Harold and Maude, where the characters come together in such specific under such specific circumstances. I find that really touching, and that was perfect. Oh, that was really funny. Yeah, so yeah, I think that, and I have strong feelings about sort of the conventional romantic comedy, which is supposed to be more mainstream because it shows couples, normal couples, finding each other in these sort of loopy and fantastic ways. But I actually think that some of those characters have become so stereotyped and so like a run of the mill character that they the normalcy that's being passed off as anything but, and actually it is becomes so unrealistic that I have a hard time connecting to it. So I think when people, obviously the writers, the people who have created these stories that are more unconventional, have become so, they're telling stories about very specific characters that they've created, and they have found a truth in those characters that is unmatchable. So it's anything but stereotypical, and there's a ring of truth in those stories because of that. So it's not to say that the mainstream comedies couldn't have that too, but sometimes they do seem to lose it because they're trying to give you the every woman and the every man, when I think that when you're really going to find a story about an every woman and every man is when you really get into the truth of what that character, what really makes that person tick, and it's always going to be quirky and specific. So it sort of does anybody a disservice to see a story about the girl who loves weddings and everything in her life is weddings, 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 and that's yes, that review that I read was like, that would not go unmedicated in real life. Like, that person is not a normal person. So just as these characters aren't either. And it sure is enjoyable to watch unconventional characters dealing with things truthfully in their own worlds. So I think that Good Dick really embodied a lot of that. This is gonna be really long because you can't edit this. Shit.
Show us your tits.
I said specific. I said the word specific a lot. I tried not to, but I just couldn't get around it. So looking back on my own, on this thing, I said specific way too many times. But yeah, that pretty much sums up. That sums up a little bit of how I feel.
Show us your 08s.
Boobs.